So you already know how to light a character with the classic 3-point setup. Add a key light to show the overall character, drop in a fill light to soften the harsh shadows, and finally a rim light to separate the character from the background. With some minor adjustments to light power, you hit render and get a somewhat flat, largely uninspiring image. It just doesn't compare to what you see online or had in mind. So let's see how a few tweaks can make all the difference. First, this basic scene setup is nothing special. It's just a Suzanne with a subdivision modifier and a plane with one edge extruded up and beveled to give a bit of a smooth transition. Likewise, the materials are super simple, a middle grey tone for the floor and a light skin tone with a very low subsurface scattering for Suzanne. Next, we make some adjustments to the workspace. First, add a camera and frame the subject to what you want. Then split the viewport into two and set the top window to be the camera perspective using Control Numpad 0. It's always important to adjust lighting based on what the camera will render. For rendering, we are going to use cycles in this case, but the basic process is much the same no matter what renderer you use. Set a fairly low viewport samples and turn on denoising, at which point set the camera viewport to display in full rendered mode. The result will be a barely lit scene with no active lights. We actually don't want this. You want to create and adjust lights one at a time with no other illumination source active. To achieve that, select the world properties and set the strength to 0. With no other lights, the render viewport should be black. Start by adding a key area light that is positioned and aimed at the part of the subject you most want lit up. Just because it's the key light doesn't mean it has to be super bright. The main goal is to establish the primary direction of the light source and in turn the parts you want to be most in shadow. By using an area light, we not only have light power but also shape and size options. The main impact that the size of a light will have is on how sharp the shadows will be. The larger the area light gets, the softer any shadows are from the same distance the light is from the subject. Next, let's fill in those shadows a bit with a fill light. Make sure to turn off any other lights while placing and adjusting each new light source. That way you can see the impact each light is having on its own. Once it looks about right for the scene you want, turn the key light back on. Now you can make adjustments to power, size and maybe even shape to get the right balance for the look you are after. In general, try not to go too overboard at this stage. Even if things seem a bit dark, there are still more lights to add and every additional light will make the scene brighter. Now we want to help separate the subject from the background with a rim light. Once again, first turn off all other lights so that you can just see the full impact of the rim light. Chances are the rim light will be the brightest main light in the scene, and in order to better control its placement, a more confined spotlight is used. That's not to say it has to be super overpowering and basically blow out any surface it hits. If we add the other two lights back in, we still have our classic 3-point lighting setup, but with more thought and careful balance between all the lights. However, we are not done yet. In most cases, there is an overall light, usually from above, that just provides general illumination. This is of course the world light we turned off at the start, which while now turning it back on helps a bit, it is just a little too general and lacks easy adjustment control. The solution is instead to add a new top light. So with world set back to 0 and all other lights turned off, we had a fairly large but low powered light some distance away. Once that is combined with the other lights, we now have a generally soft lit scene where all details can be seen, but the main focus is clearly on the front of the face. While not bad, it still lacks interest or a sense of belonging. One solution to that is to add an indication of environment or surroundings. To do that, we create another light with a fairly high power, but some distance away and aimed more at the background behind our main subject. A bit of a blue tint adds some more contrast, and when combined with all the previous lights, things start to look pretty good. However, it still somewhat lacks focus and almost highlights the background more, which usually isn't all that interesting. One solution to that is to use a light blocker. This does as the name suggests, and is used to either fully or partially block the light from a source. For the most part, it's nothing much more than a plane that has been subdivided and then every second face deleted, leaving a Venetian blind type pattern that will block or let light through. By then adjusting the vertical location of the blocker, it's possible to define exactly what areas are lit or in shadow, while moving it closer or further away from the light source will adjust how sharp or well defined the shadows are. Now we could just leave it there, but if you want a little more atmosphere, one can achieve that by basically adding an atmosphere. To do that, just add a cube that encases the whole area of the scene and set its viewport display to bounds. Then assign a new material using the principled volume shader and connect to the volume output. Finally, adjust the density value till you get the effect you want. Looking at a final render, it is possible the result will be different depending on the version of Blender you are using. With version 3.6, the cycles render looks like the image we aimed for at the start. However, if we render the exact same file using the now new Blender 4 release, things are a little different. The most obvious is of course the faint white circle, which is in fact the rim spotlight showing up in the atmosphere fog we just added. Technically, this is slightly more correct. There is an actual light source right there, but chances are it's not the result we wanted. Fortunately, Blender 4 also has a new easy fix in the form of light linking. If we select the rim light, then on its object properties, under the shading option, we now have light linking. This is where we can basically break the laws of physics by including or excluding a light's ability to impact elements within a scene. By adding a new light linking collection, we then drag and drop our fog cube into the list and then clear the checkbox to exclude it from just the fog atmosphere. It still acts as a rim light on Suzanne, just that now the faint white circle is gone, leaving us with a similar render compared to what we started with in Blender 3.6. I hope this was of some use in helping to create more interesting images and showing the difference that just lighting can have. If there are any questions, then let me know in the comments below. As always, clicking like and or subscribe would be greatly appreciated, but if not, that's perfectly fine, and I hope to see you for the next one. Cheers!